Thank you for tuning in to the Afternoon Pint. This episode is sponsored by Camilla Najat of Exit Realty, Strategy Up Business Consultants, and ISS Atlantic Security Guard Services. Enjoy the show. Cheers!
Cheers!
Welcome to the Afternoon Pint. I'm Mike Tobin.
I am Matt Conrad.
And who do we have with us today?
I'm Erin Trafford.
Erin Trafford. Erin Trafford. I think I saw you on LinkedIn before.
Did you see me on LinkedIn? Did you hear me on the radio? Did you see me on TV?
You did a few of those things?
I do a few of
All
those
those
things.
different
I do
things,
a
yeah.
few of
Okay,
those
I think it was
things.
I saw her
LinkedIn for me.
live on LinkedIn this morning.
Live on LinkedIn.
When this airs,
What does
it
that
wouldn't
mean?
be this morning, but
Live
right
on
now
LinkedIn,
it was.
like your blog thing?
No, she went live. Like, you know how you can go live on Facebook? Apparently you can go live on LinkedIn. I didn't know that until I saw this morning.
Well, there you go.
I've only ever done that by accident, so congratulations.
That's impressive.
I got a notification. It was like, Aaron's live on LinkedIn. I was like, you can do that?
Really?
Yeah.
And I should say we're at Great Roads Brewing, and
Yes.
a little different.
You're eating fries.
I'm eating a French fry.
Yeah.
We, if you heard of hot ones, we're doing hot dog ones because they have hot dogs on the menu here at Great Roads Brewing, and sometimes we don't get a chance to eat before we record, so we have to fit it in when we can.
But you're missing the ghost pepper hot sauce. Like,
Oh yeah,
that would
I would
make
totally do
this legit.
I have the last dab at home, actually.
he loves
Do
the hot
you?
dogs.
I ordered it online. Yeah, I have it.
Okay, well, I would probably pay a fare to see you guys sit here and do a hot dog ones with that
Oh.
a live podcast.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
with hot dogs.
Yes, no, it has to be with hot dogs.
Dipping them in hot sauce. Yeah, that's
do it.
disgusting.
You know what? I would do
doing
that. I would love to see you do that. Because
I have a heat sensitivity. I go about medium, and then I drop off.
things
Can't do
onions
it.
are hot.
No, I don't. Onions aren't hot. But like, I don't like the dumb hot sauces. When you're not having fun anymore while you're doing it, like I mean, I, don't
still
wanna
have fun the
sweat
whole time.
bullets and be all upset. But so, Erin, let's get back to you. Sorry, we can talk about hot dogs for the next 40 minutes. But your business, you launched your own media company, right?
I did.
Yeah. So tell me about
Seems
that.
that
like,
seems
how
like
did
kind
you
of a big deal.
get? Yeah. How'd you get to
kind
launch
of
your
a
own
big
media
deal.
company?
By accident.
Okay.
As I've done most of things in my life.
Okay.
I grew up in media, literally grew up in media. The year I was born, my father launched his first radio station in Toronto. And so I quite literally grew up in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2021, I had a newborn baby in a pandemic and all of the things we were dealing with then. And I just decided the time was right for me to transition from being a consultant to having a media company. It
Okay.
just made perfect sense to me at that point in time.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's how Story Studio Network was born.
Story Studio Network.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what year did that start?
2021.
2021.
2021.
Spring
had her
of
kid.
2021.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I
I,
had
had
a
my
kid in
daughter
2021.
There you
well,
go.
she was born in 2020, but yeah.
Oh,
Mistakes
okay.
happening in
It was,
2021. No, just kidding.
No, my son was born August 2021. But yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a you know, a bit of a side thing. It's an interesting thing raising a toddler, kid, baby, whatever, in a pandemic, don't you find?
It was interesting, just that whole experience of being pregnant in a pandemic
Yeah,
and
yeah.
having no support. And she was my second, so I kind of knew how it was supposed to be. And yeah, it was wild. I think it made me more ballsy, though.
Have you like heard or read up anything about the term COVID babies?
Oh gosh, yes,
Do you think it's a thing?
I do think it's a thing.
Well, enlighten me. COVID
Yeah, so
babies.
COVID babies is kind of a term that's being given to babies who were born
Like tiny humans.
tiny humans.
Yeah.
It's kind of a phenomenon that I don't like saying the word like advanced, but like kind of. They're just seem to be a little bit ahead of the normal curve just because they've had so much attention from like their parents. So like, you know, people were working from home. So there was more family time. There was more things that could, you know, all the things that you could imagine that happened with the attention that could be given to, you know, a newborn kind of thing, right?
Okay.
And so we started reading. My wife actually discovered it and informed me, and I read a little bit about it. And it just seems that like this small little sub-generation of kids have dubbed COVID babies. And I mean, I only have one, so I don't know. I can only judge based on that. But someone who may have two, you may, I don't know if you saw, Leia, like a developmental difference versus one versus the other.
Better or for worse? Or?
It's just different.
Different.
It's
but
just
yeah.
different. I
Yeah,
think
mean,
this
nothing's
cohort
better.
of kids is like, they're more resilient, but I also find that they have different attachments, right? Because they were so used to being around parents all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's really interesting. I always love and it's this funny little like tip of the hat when you're like, I have a COVID baby, you have a COVID baby.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I had a COVID baby and I started a business. And that's an even smaller subsect of female entrepreneurs. Like I have a few friends who are in that and we're like, what were we thinking? Like,
It's a lot to take
what
on.
were you thinking? You think the world's going to end? I might as well just go for it. I think that's really what it was.
So many businesses started from COVID. There was so many pivots. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a really
that's
cool time. If there's one good thing, I mean, a lot of people kind of looked and said, what am I doing? I want to do something for me, or I want to do something different, and I want to make, I have to find something that really means something to me. So they started a business one way or another. Right?
Yeah, that's
Which is
kind
really
of what
cool.
happened. That's sort of what happened to me too. And I think too, you didn't ask me this, but it's something that I've come to terms with is that being an entrepreneur at the level that I am, because we tackle a lot of really big issues at SSN, right? Like I take my years as being a broadcaster and a journalist and working with some of the largest brands in Canada and now bring it into this new media environment. But I talk about my kids. I talk about that experience. I make no shame about the fact that I am a CEO, a woman, and a mother.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool pivot that we've started to make in more corporate places is that you never used to be able to bring that element to your work. And I do all the time.
For sure.
I do all the time.
I think there's a generation now that's going to stand in the face of that. And I think it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's gotten a lot better, quite frankly, in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's gotten better, but I think it's
Still has a way to go.
I still think it's a really good thing, especially the mother kind of underlining aspect and CEO or anything. Like you don't have to be CEO, but executive or
Completely.
someone in a position of power and mother, I think is a really good conversation to continuously have. Just because, everyone talks about the wage gap, but people really, I think it's the parental gap. And it just so happens to be that the parental gap is like 99% women.
Yeah.
Right.
Completely. Right. Yeah, that's one of the hills I will die on is having that conversation over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
how's your hot dogs?
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love hot dogs, and these are delicious ones.
Oh, and you know what?
5 out of 5.
We said we were at Great Roads.
We forgot. We always introduce the drinks that
true.
we're having.
Little side note.
Support
Go
your
for it.
local breweries. I'm having the former. This was what was it called before? Old Biddy's Light.
Old Biddy's Light.
And now it's called.
Now it's
Take her easy.
Take it easy.
Take it easy?
Take her easy. Take it
Take it easy or take it her easy. One of the two, but it's a great beer, light beer. Matt, what are you having?
So Great Roads decided to make a cider, and it's how about them apples?
Is it good?
It's really good. It's
That's
dry.
a Pierre Polyev play. How?
No, it's not. How about them apples is the what's it called? The Matt Damon thing where he slams it up against the movie there. He slams the how about them apples, and he does.
What
it against
movie's
the window.
that?
I'm
I know
trying
I've
to
seen
remember.
it. I know I've seen it. I just can't think of it.
can't
Take
remember.
With Hunting.
Yes.
Okay,
Good Will
Good Will
Hunting.
Hunting. Do you remember
Thank
that?
you.
I do remember that.
Okay, cool.
It's a play on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
All right.
So anyway, back to Erin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what is your company? What kind of work are you guys doing? What kind of media are you guys doing?
Yeah, we specialize in owned media. So it's a blend of earned and digital. And our secret sauce is narrative podcasts. That's our secret sauce where we thrive because
You like that?
I hire broadcast journalists to work for me. So I
Okay.
don't hire
Okay.
strategists. We are a team of producers, of editors, of people who have been in the world for a very long time.
So narrative in a sense, like if it's a documentary style podcast.
Yeah, we've done quite a few of those, or investigative.
Yeah.
The term that we use to describe SSN, which is the acronym, is we're a newsroom for your brand. So we
Okay.
operate through a newsroom lens, which lets us play in the world that we like to play in, but also directly work with clients outside of the traditional newsroom environment, which we know is falling apart minute by minute,
It's having a tough
day by
go.
day.
Yeah,
oh
well,
my God.
Yeah, like when you were saying you started a media company in 2021, starting any company during COVID is a risk, but starting media as well is
Isn't that so
interesting.
funny?
Yeah.
Like a bunch of people have brought that to my attention. Like, wow, like you're in a really risky business. I'm like, I don't know any other business.
Well,
Like,
fair enough.
I literally don't know any other business. This wasn't like a.
You had a pretty extensive background. In
Yeah,
media.
I started my first on-air gig. I say this all the time, where they actually paid me. I was 16 years old, Talk 640 in Toronto.
Cool.
I covered the Eminem concert. Those of you who are of a certain age, when Eminem was trying to come to Toronto for the first time, and at the time, the deputy premier was trying to block him from coming because he was obscene. There was this whole outcry. Do you guys remember that? It was a
What year was
skydiving.
that?
I do
Like
remember.
2002, 2000.
No, this was
2000.
like
Could be much later than that. Or 99.
yeah,
the
it
Slim
was-
Shady
it
LP,
was-
and then the 2002, the Marshall Mathers LP came
it
out.
was around 99,
Okay.
2000 because I was
Wow.
still in high school.
Wow.
So that was, that happened.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up. So I did a master's in journalism and broadcast news.
Cool. What'd you study at?
Western,
Awesome. Yeah. Where's Western?
London, Ontario.
Okay. London, Ontario.
Yeah, I went to U of T and studied politics, and then I went and did grad school there.
Oh, wow, okay.
And one
Studying politics, is that because you kind of wanted to use did you want to go into kind of like political science or like a media type coverage on politics?
Isn't that funny? Because I've always seen politics and media as being two sides of the same coin, right? Like the study of power. It was always a matter of which side of that coin am I going to be on now? And
Right.
because of my upbringing, media was the natural extension. But I knew that to be a good journalist, I had to understand the machinations of government,
Yeah.
and I had to understand that game. So, yeah, I streamed into that in undergrad, and then furthered my skills in the newsroom in grad school. And then one of the cooler things that I ever did was straight out of grad school in 2006, I got a tap on the shoulder from a then news director, and I guess she was a cluster manager, to be part of a team that was launching a radio station. And when I say launching, like quite literally, the frequency was unmanned at the time. So they had applied to the CRTC to take over this frequency.
That's so cool to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's so amazing to launch your own radio station. That's so wild.
It was
Like
wicked.
back in the day,
It was
Yeah.
wicked. Like
Yeah.
literally, we went as a team to the transmitter site and flipped the switch.
It's awesome.
So we called
cool.
it like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
flipped the switch.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
So now anytime Sir Duke by Sir Duke come, oh my God, why Stevie Wonder? I'm like, I can see his face.
Yeah.
Comes on the air. I think of that moment because that was the first song that came over our frequency.
I was just gonna say I can see his face, like he can't see yours.
No, I know. I know. It's like
that was
there's a Stevie Wonder joke in here
yeah,
somewhere. But when I hear that
Love
song,
Stevie,
it's
though.
like brings me back. So yeah, we flipped the switch, and I worked that station really hard for 3 years, and we picked it up off the ground and ran with it. And I mean, I've had a pretty storied career since then. So
Cool.
I've done a lot of cool shit.
It makes a lot of sense, like the media to the story. You're telling people's story.
Completely.
Yeah, yeah,
Completely. Yeah. What I've been able to do over the course of the last 20 years is understand contextually how to engage an audience, right? Which is key. Yeah.
So is that expanded beyond Nova Scotia in different provinces, or even in the U.S., or are you getting clients?
95% of our clients are outside of Nova Scotia.
Yeah,
That
that's
doesn't
awesome.
surprise me though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a couple banner clients here who you will hear more about in the coming, depending on when this comes out, in the coming weeks, coming months. But most of the work we do are with clients, not-for-profits, sector-based organizations, basically any folks who are having trouble getting earned media come to us.
Cool. And are you looking for broadcasters consistently? Like not asking for us. I eat hot dogs when I talk. It's not terrible, but I know a few, right? Like I was wondering, like, would you be looking for broadcasters to like come and join your company to help you with future projects?
Sometimes.
Or you kind of have a stable on staff.
Yeah, you can join our stable, and then
Yeah.
it's project by project, kind of the skill set we need, right? Like, do we need a
okay.
jock? Do we need an interviewer? Do we need somebody who has the political background, or somebody who's been
Right.
on, we're working on a project right now where we need somebody who has kind of gone toe to toe at the federal level, right?
Okay.
So there's a different kind of skill set. And so we do have a roster, and so anybody who wants to kind of join our roster, you can.
Cool.
And then we would tap you when that skill set matches up.
Our skill set is we just drink and talk to people. So if you ever have a skill set that needs to,
You can eat hot dogs and talk at the same time. He's hired.
yeah, exactly.
You put me in a food eating contest.
Yeah. So you're having people reach out to you. I mean, you said podcast, but I mean, TV or anything like that, or is it online media at all? Like, or is it like just journalism?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Camilla Najat with Exit Realty Metro.
Camilla Najat is an experienced real estate agent who prides herself in finding the perfect home for her clients. Camilla can help you with a comparative market analysis to help determine the value of your home if you're planning on selling, or help you determine the going rate for the neighborhood you're moving into. She can also work with you at your pace.
You can reach Camilla by calling 902-880-8429 or email camilla@exitmetro.ca.
Also, you can find her on Facebook at Camilla Najat, Exit Realty Metro.
It's mainly podcast. We do video versions for some clients, depending. Because I glossed over the fact that I was also in TV news for a while. But we don't create content for television broadcasting.
Oh, okay.
That's not our bailiwick.
Mostly just podcasting. So have you noticed, like, how do you get, because we're in this, and it's a question that we often like kind of wonder about, how do you get to a situation where you get your message out to people, and it's not video? Because, and he and I both kind of agree with this, I like to listen to podcasts while I drive. But it seems like people like to watch podcasts, which is bonkers to me.
It's bonkers to me too.
Because it's just us with mics in our face and everything, right? But people like it.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, well, you could drive to work and just listen. Why do you have to watch it, right?
I listen to things that like shouldn't even were meant to be seen visually. I'd rather listen to them. I'd rather listen to Real Time with Bill Maher.
Oh my God, I love that show. Wait, hold on. Wait. Can we just talk about that show for a second?
Oh,
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because if anybody is listening from HBO and you want a production consultant, he needs a little bit of help this season.
Why?
It's falling flat.
Yeah.
It is
You mean his
falling
jokes?
flat. No, I find there's an issue with that show. And if you watch it through the lens that I can't help it, right?
I've watched it for 10 years.
I'm always a producer when I'm watching it.
Sure.
He's losing the thread between or among the monologue and the feature guest and the roundtable. I need there to be a why should I keep watching? And it shouldn't just be because Bill's going to a roundtable. There's a stronger, I don't know if he lost writers during the writer's strike, but there's something missing this season.
Really?
He needs an air check really badly. And that's something that we do really well at SSN that other houses don't do, because we have this ability to, with the broadcast ear and the producer's ear, is I can listen to something and say, here is where you lost the audience. And that's a very critical skill. Okay. And don't ask me to explain how I can do it.
No, that's a cool skill.
That's just,
But
I can say, here's where you lost.
I'm highly analytical like that too. I drive myself absolutely nuts, right? So it's like, if I want something to hit a certain way, man, I could almost never be right in a sense, but it's a feeling.
Yeah.
You watch it and you feel it, and then you know it's perfect.
But when you watch it and you feel it as an audience member, the trick to creating excellent content, I'll come back to the question about listening and watching, right, is what you really want to do is have them not feel that. You don't want your audience to feel your strategy. You don't want your audience to feel your script.
Love it, yeah.
You want them to feel their emotions.
Yeah.
Right? You
Exactly.
don't. So when I'm listening,
because people remember the way they feel.
Yes, they do. I had a moment in the car yesterday. I was driving home from the grocery store, flipping around the frequencies, and Material Girl was playing on, I think it was The Breeze, or it might have been Wave. Anyway, Material Girl. And I love it because that song, hands down, you can hear the edit for radio. Right? Because the actual song is 5 minutes long, but to play on the radio, you want the song to be 3.5 minutes, give or take, right? That's just how it is. And every time I can hear the edit in the song, and I'm like, ooh, I shouldn't be able to hear that. So when you think about your content in the same way, are they hearing the edit? Are they hearing these clunky transitions? Are they hearing the thread? Or are they feeling the thread? That's a very subtle nuance, but that's what a good producer will help you do.
But it does get complicated because today it's messy, right, by design, especially if you're listening to a lot of these podcasts that are conversational like this one.
Exactly.
Where everybody's talking over each other, right?
Eating hot dogs.
People taking drinks. I mean, this show, we actually rely on a bit of the ambience. Ambiance in the background. How to say it? In the background, we rely on that, right? And it helps with the show and the bar sounds and all this kind of. We like having a little bit of noise back in the background when it happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of our thing,
But not too much noise. Though.
No,
We've had shows that were nearly destroyed.
Dude, there's a show
balance.
coming out very soon where I collected audio in a sawmill.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
And then I handed that to my team and I was like, here you go. There's a treat. I'll see you in a week.
Yeah, that would be, I wouldn't like you.
They didn't like me. It was, and I mean, I've done some crazy shit in terms of reporting, and that audio came back and I was like, oh, I was wearing earplugs and ear protection, and I just ran my tape
from an
the whole
audio
time.
level. Here's
Oh
what
my
happens
God, it
when
was
that happens.
insane.
So it's really friggin' noisy in a room, right?
Insane.
So it's really noisy in a room. So I can cut out a ton of the noise just through,
Yeah.
apps and stuff. But what happens is you start to get that airplane cabin feeling in your ears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you're at like 5,000 feet and
Yeah.
that weird ear pressure thing, and it sucks, right? And you just don't want to have it. So there's always a balance. You need to have somewhat good recording space. I wouldn't know how you would do that to something.
We did it. Wait
I wanna
till
hear
it comes out.
You got to send that to me when it comes out.
Yeah, we'll
'cause
definitely
sounds
take a
awesome.
listen.
Yeah.
We didn't do the whole show there, but I was just doing like site collection. But the audio is quite funny. But back to the whole idea of video versus audio is one of the things that you need to think about, especially if you're communicating a really big idea. So taking us out of kind of the traditional interview style, because not to put too fine a point on it, but this is an easy format to manage.
Yeah.
But if you're telling a really big story, so, the story of food insecurity, the story of Arctic security, the story of truth and reconciliation, like something that's really, really big and meaty,
Right.
where you're really going after hearts and minds.
Yeah.
You need context, you need emotion, you need to pull that thread, and you don't want your audience to feel,
Hear a drop microphone halfway through
well, no, but I mean,
a serious moment.
you might be doing asynchronous production because something happens in September that has bearing on something that happens in March, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of different elements that go into telling a really big, juicy story. Point being that the listening can't be felt, and you're looking at it as an arc, right? So people who watch it on YouTube, it's really just the way that they're interpreting the information. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to produce a podcast. I don't think it's about that. I think it's really about understanding situationally, where is that person in their awareness, in their emotional state. When I'm walking my dog, I'm listening to podcasts about like angels and weird mysticism because I find it like really grounding and flowy, and he's
You
my
don't listen
spirit
to the
animal.
murder podcast?
Oh, and I just said to my husband, like, I finished a podcast and I was going to go for a run yesterday, and I was like, oh, give me a podcast recommendation. He starts rhyming off all this true crime. I was like, I'm not going to go run on the trail by myself listening to a true crime podcast, because then it makes me feel even more unsafe. So it's part of it is really understanding where is my listener when they're listening. Are they in the car? Are they on the trail? Are they assembling IKEA furniture? So I think the YouTube thing happens as part of like, the YouTube is part of the Netflix and scroll behavior. Right? It's a different behavior.
Right.
Right.
So it's okay. You just have to understand where it fits situationally. Make sense?
No,
Makes-
that
makes
actually
some
does
sense.
that actually does make sense.
Because when you're driving, you're actually really focused on that podcast and the road. Those are the two things. Those are the only two things you can really focus on.
Sure. That's right.
But when you're watching the YouTube or the Netflix or whatever, you can be making hot dogs for your kids. You can be feeding the dog. You can be scrolling on social media. You can be texting back your friend. You can be doing a whole bunch of other things. So your level of engagement with that content is going to be different.
Right. No, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
No, that makes a lot of sense, because there is definitely. I mean, we're not that type of household, but there's people who just keep the TV on all the time. Same
I know.
kind of thing, right?
I know. People have TVs in their bedrooms. I don't understand that either.
I do.
I
Have
would
TV
never
in-
sleep.
No, I have a TV in the bedroom, but that's mostly
Yeah,
because
you too. My girlfriend falls asleep way before me. So
But we
I
don't-
just watch TV when she falls asleep.
Well, there's that too, but
Yeah.
there's also the fact that we don't. So we don't do screen time for kids. So TV doesn't go on until he goes to sleep, and he's 3, so he's fighting every inch that he can.
It's like it's bedtime. Godspeed.
Yeah. So at this
Yeah.
point, we, TV doesn't really get turned on until like 8:30 or something like that.
Yeah, same here though.
And then we'll watch like a show or two, and then I'll turn it off, and then we're already in bed. We just roll down, whatever, go to sleep, whatever. But it's just one of those things where we have a TV in the living room. I don't watch. I watched it for the first time on Sunday because it was football season. Sorry, it's a football season started, so I watched football, and that's the only time I watch that TV is when I'm watching football on Sundays.
See, so it would be understanding that behavior. I, as someone with kids, young kids, it's the same. It's like we don't turn on the TV sometimes till 10 o'clock at night.
Same.
Yeah, that's the thing,
that's what I'm
right?
saying. Yeah.
So I mean, and like my wife's a night shower, and we have the bathroom is off the bedroom, so like I'll go in, put something on or whatever. She does her like little nighttime routine, and that's when we watch TV.
My stepdaughter's 12 has zero interest in TV, like ever.
That's interesting.
Like she has one in her room,
Yeah.
It's on to put her to sleep. She puts it on just to go to sleep, like to turn around and have a little bit of white noise on it.
Yeah, yeah.
She's usually just playing The Simpsons, actually, which is funny. She got into it. She still plays it all the time, right? There's countless on Disney Plus. So many episodes.
It's all of them. It's all of them, right? They bought Fox.
So it's like so she'll just put that on and go right to sleep.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'll hear Homer Simpson if I go use the washroom 1 a.m. The wall in her bedroom's on the other side. I'll just hear Homer and Marge arguing.
You have to introduce her to the sleep function.
What?
You have to introduce her to the sleep function on TV.
I mean, she's happy with it. Does it? She manages that and does fine sleeping. So leave her alone.
Yeah. I think it's really the point is understanding the behavior and understanding the emotional impact, and then what is the payoff at the end. So sometimes I think here's the truth of it. When I used to host a morning show, or even when I did the TV news, we always knew how things were going to end.
Right.
We knew where we wanted to bring people.
You wrapped it up, and
there's a lot. There's a lot that to be said for knowing what your intended outcome is for your audience, and I think that gets lost, and that's a critical thing that we talk about all the time in new media is you can't just do it without intention, because if you do it you can, but if you do it without intention, you're leaving a lot of what I say is juice on the table. Like you're not squeezing that lemon for all it's worth.
Right.
Do you really feel like your style of like kind of, I guess, doing media is really like kind of the future? Do you think that that's the case? I mean, not even just with podcasts, because I mean, like you have your own company, but you're almost like a contractor kind of thing, right? Maybe someone, could CTV come to you and say, hey, we want you to just do this part of whatever. Do you think that could be the future of media? We're seeing how it's so difficult it seems to be to do everything.
I think there's a world where, I think what you're asking is, are the big guys capable of fulfilling the mandate anymore? And
do it all, right? Like not just like, sure, you can go and watch football on CTV, you can watch the news, you can watch Sullivan's Crossing. Those are all 3 very different things for a different audience.
Yeah.
And I understand they're not producing those things, but like, maybe they outsource some stuff kind of thing, right? Whether it be the news, like, because they are heavily news, right? Mm-hmm. So I just wonder
it makes sense that they would outsource like community stories and voices and certain things. Like, it would make sense that they do that in the future. If you think about it. Like,
I think what it comes down to with that is what we're really dancing around is the value of that news content. And then you kind of get into the ethics of truthiness and all of those journalistic principles become really murky when you turn a certified broadcaster into a community news platform in that way. Mm-hmm. So we've looked at that kind of approach as like, how do we crowdsource news stories? And, if we take the sheer example of the bear in Cole Harbor a couple weeks ago,
that's right.
which is actually the trail that I run on.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So I was terrified. But if you had gone that route in that story, the lack of truth would have gotten out faster than the actual truth, right? Because so there's an issue there with monitoring and such. I'm not saying that the idea is a bad idea. I think it's great. I think fundamentally what we need to do with our news business is bring it back down to ground level. That's what you're actually saying, right? We need to have more community involvement and buy-in in what the product is, because right now we're not turning to them because we don't see the value in local news anymore.
Is it that back on us as the chimps that are using our cell phones that are just
it's so funny,
and
right?
I only like happy things. I want to look at Marvel superheroes, or whatever the heck it is.
But you know what though? The minute someone local gets taken off the air for someone in, say, Toronto or whatever, everyone loses their minds.
This is true.
But that's gone in 10 minutes. Right? Mm-hmm. And then you're on your phone being outraged or whatever with something else.
That is true. That's fair.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we have, back to the TV on at the house thing. When I was a kid, like, I remember Live at 5 used to be on the TV every single day around supper time. Your mother would just have it on. It'd be on in another room in the house, and it'd be on, and you'd hear. And you'd go in, you'd see a story or two, and you might step out. But, like, that was something that was kind of grounding in a sense, right? Of what's going on in your own province, what's going on in your own backyard.
But it was also grounding in your day, right? So back to the behavior. It was just on. You knew if it was on, it was supper was going to be on the table in the next 20 minutes.
So last year on CTV, they were giving away a hot tub. Okay. And we have a hot tub. But they were giving away an Arctic Spa hot tub for listening to the news every day. You had to call this thing. So Andrea and I started playing it. And I started turning on CTV every single day. Like, we don't even have cable. And I had rabbit ears and I set them up and, it worked. So yeah, it's like, it was really kind of calm. It was very calming to have news on while you were making supper at the house at 5 a.m.
But let's talk about what that so that tells me something, because I've been asked multiple times.
Right.
When I consult with companies on this, is like, why don't we just run a contest? Why don't we run a contest? And here's where I'll throw, kind of the bomb into the middle of the table and say, great, except how does that change behavior? Because the value for you in getting those rabbit ears out was the bait of the hot tub.
Sure.
Yeah.
You didn't keep coming back. That didn't change your behavior.
Didn't win, so I never listened again.
Right. That's my point.
They would have to do it. They'd have to almost essentially have a contest like all year.
But is that what we want to build our news culture on? Is that you're actually you're saying you're incentivized? It's like what I told you before we turned on the mics. Is like, if I want my kids to do anything, I promise them a hot dog and an ice cream. It's like, is that how I want to live my life? Is that the price of parenting? Is that every day I have to spend $10 on hot dogs and ice cream? Because that sounds like bullshit to me.
Yeah.
So are we actually educating the audience to always have some sort of potential payoff? Shouldn't the value of the news and the value of having an informed public be enough?
It should, but it's not going to cut it for this generation that's going on.
Right?
It's true. I hear more and more people say, "Oh, I don't watch the news," or "I don't pay attention to that. It's too negative." And honestly, when I hear that, it actually makes me a little bit disappointed in that person.
It's extremely disappointing.
Or how our news gets so twisted. Like, I'm on Google. I use Google News as an app that I use to rely on news. Unfortunately, what happens with Google is it goes with algorithms. I like music and entertainment. I like all this other stuff. And at the end of the week, I'm seeing more entertainment stuff than I'm seeing, local news stories. That's on me a bit, right? Because maybe I'm looking more at the entertainment. But now that's all it's spoon feeding me.
Completely.
And I'm not getting a chance to see the local stories anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I understand the whole ignorance is bliss type of thing. I understand that mentality, but to me, that's disappointing. I think it's maybe because, for whatever reason, like growing up and still now, I value knowledge and intelligence.
Yeah.
And feel it's a responsibility for people to be in the know of what's going on around them.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Strategy Up. Strategy Up is a business consulting firm led by Mark Zerka, who has over 20 years' experience in building commercial strategies that will up your game, organize your teams, increase your productivity, and grow your business.
Whether you're a construction company looking to grow your revenue or a busy restaurant owner just trying to keep the doors open, Strategy Up can help. Strategy Up's boutique-style consultations will help you improve business process across nearly any industry.
Being a successful entrepreneur does not mean you have to be an expert in everything. Strategy Up specializes in building a relationship with you. Once pain points in the business are realized, Strategy Up will introduce process and technology that will power up your game to the next level.
A successful business requires investment. Your next step towards growth starts now. Email info@mystrategyup.com for a free business discovery call. Up your game with Strategy Up.
I completely concur. And obviously, preaching to the choir on this. And I posted on LinkedIn, I can't remember when, a couple weeks ago, after having a few conversations with local broadcast owners in Atlantic Canada, because nobody has the answer to this. Like, there's no easy button solution to we're going to save news, right? So, and I'm just interested in having conversations. How does the Story Studio model enhance that, to your point? Like, is there a licensing thing there? I don't know. Am I open to having the conversation? Yes. Have I been approached to have MOUs for some of our big content to play in holes in their programming? Yes, we totally have. It's not the perfect solution, though. So I'm having these conversations. And what I think is the challenge is news has developed, CNN, 24-hour news cycle, started in 1982.
Ron Burgundy.
Ron Burgundy.
I'm Ron Burgundy with a question mark. Right. So we've been in this for the better part of 4 decades in this cycle of news all the time, the time. And as soon as you end up with an oversupply, which is what happened inadvertently, you end up in this question of value. You need advertisers to fund that model.
Yeah.
That was the model we had back then, was TV was funded by advertisers, right? If you're not paying for something, you are the product. So you're not paying for news, you guys are the product.
Right.
So we have a system that's failing on both sides. And here's why. Because you don't value the product, so you're not engaging in it, right? The audience. I'm not saying like the royal you.
Yes.
And then the advertisers, there's too many options, A, and B, they can't control the content because if you've ever been in a TV station or a radio station or a newspaper, you know that there is actually a physical division between the news division and the sales division.
Right.
Yeah. They're usually on different floors or they're
Right.
separated by a big wall. And that was to maintain the ethical integrity of the news department. You can't be informed by the sales, right?
That's right. Yeah,
okay. But both of those problems are coalescing right now.
Well,
Right?
that was going to be something I was going to, like, it's a perfect segue to go to the next thing is, like, I understand that, anyone can buy news. I mean, like, people will claim Fox, has their bias because it's owned by someone who has a bias.
Right.
Same thing with CNN, right? They have their biases and everything. I mean, we always kind of have it, but if we break things down and have smaller companies, kind of like, and what I mean by smaller, like someone like yourself versus CNN or whatever.
Yep.
What's stopping anyone who can buy podcast gear spreading news that, the misinformation and all
Well,
that
and
stuff, right?
here's where we get to this idea now of the barrier to entry, right? So the barrier to entry in the news business traditionally was extremely high, right?
Yeah.
I talked about flipping the switch. Do you know how much that transmitter cost?
Yeah.
Right? You're into a transmitter for what I don't know at the time, whatever, $300,000 just out of the gate.
Wow.
The barrier to entry is very high. You have to deal with the CRTC. You're spending thousands of dollars with lawyers and all of those things, right?
Right.
The barrier to entry to owning that property is high.
Right.
Right.
And so then you get to kind of, is it Spider-Man with great responsibility?
Yeah.
Great power comes great responsibility.
Great
is
power,
it Spider-Man?
It's
Yeah.
Spider-Man, yeah.
Not Superman.
Uncle Ben, technically, but yes.
Okay, Uncle Ben. my kids love Miles Morales. We're in that phase right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, same,
they're
yeah,
totally into it.
Oh, yeah.
And they're girls, which I'm like, they shop in the boys department at
Okay.
H&M because it's
cool.
so great. So yeah, Spider-Man. So the barrier to entry, now we're in this world of new media. So this is a good
Right.
segue because
Yeah.
the barrier to entry over the last 5 years has gotten extremely low.
Yes.
Okay.
Look at us.
Right.
She says right. She came all the way here just to tell us we shouldn't be doing this.
So the fastest way to overcome that, in my opinion, in the news business is not to go the community, everybody has an equal voice. Because
Yes.
the reality is, it's not true. Not everybody knows what they're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And what are you listening to? Kind of go back to defend me and Matt. What are you listening to for entertainment? We're entertainment.
Yeah, completely.
We're not news. We're
No.
entertainment. We do. We provide some information. We try to learn with listening and talking. But yeah, we're not the news.
but you're part of the
We're not the news,
ecosystem.
right?
You're not news,
and
but
if
you're
Mike
part
or
of the
Matt
ecosystem.
has an opinion, that's not the be all end all. That's just
Whoa,
our
whoa, whoa,
opinion.
whoa, whoa.
Vote this way.
Right? Yeah.
Listen, it's either I'm right or you're wrong.
But what I'm saying is, I think really back to the value thing and what I posted on LinkedIn is what we're missing in this equation now, and what we need now is somebody who is going to straddle those two worlds.
Like a fact checker.
You need, no, not a fact checker. You need
No?
a news marketer. You need
Okay.
somebody who understands the value of the dollar, how to talk to the advertisers, but you also need somebody who knows how to consistently sell the credibility of the news and why it's important.
She's saying you need her.
Yeah.
That's what she's
okay. Okay. Yeah.
I have many jobs.
But that's a tough sell. It really is because
well, if you want to run news,
yeah.
you've got to be able to. It's a
such a
loss
tough sell,
leader. It's
right.
extremely expensive to run a news.
But it's so
journal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It is.
Let
it's
me
a
ask
loss.
you about this. This moves a little bit. The moves a hot.
Yeah.
you've heard in politics, and I'm not getting involved politically here. A year ago, we had a guest on, and we said something. He said it was a little bit about the defunding the CBC.
Okay.
My feelings were, I don't like the word defunding the CBC, just like I don't like the words of defunding the police. I do think things need to be looked at more carefully.
Defunding is a bit of a hot button word. Yeah,
defunding
agree.
is extreme word, and I do think that
Refunding. We have to look at how we fund.
Sure. No, actually, that's a good way to say it. I would agree with that a lot more. But how do you feel about something like, I mean, non-politically, so, say there wasn't blue or red here, but just on that one thing. Do you think that, CBC, let's just say, what do you feel about that situation?
I think the CBC has made it very hard for the others. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to, I'm not being political or personal, because I know a lot of people who've worked at the CBC and I respect the crap out of them. So it's not the people at the CBC. The structure of that particular organization has been jerry-rigged and gerrymandered over the years through political pressure and so on and so forth, that now it's unrecognizable. And they're way out over their skis, right? It's $1 billion. And if you're following, I'll give you a good follow on LinkedIn. So John Pohl, he's based in Ontario. He owns, I don't know how many radio stations he owns, at least a dozen at this point. Wow. And he picked up a few more when Bell offloaded their latest offload of stations. He picked up a few frequencies, one in Kingston, I believe. Anyway, John is so far out ahead on this in terms of articulating really, really reasonable ways that we can approach what we'll call the problem of the CBC.
Okay.
Things like back down to the transmitters and the real estate. Here's something that we discovered at Story Studio is we do a lot of work in forestry. We do a lot of work in mining, and both of those sectors have cultural implications. So we're going through things like archives for comments from politicians from XYZ. CBC is sitting on 100 years of archives that are not publicly available. Why? Why can't you guys, if you wanted to pull a clip from CBC,
if it was government funded and all that,
why can't you guys pay like $10 to search the archives or whatever?
Should sit on a server somewhere. Yeah,
absolutely, it should, but it doesn't. So
that's true,
and that would be a move towards democratizing the CBC again and making it a little bit less of an arm's length thing. I mean, there are a bunch of other suggestions. So my suggestion is go read John Pohl's last 6 or 7 LinkedIn posts, because you'll get and I agree with him like 99% of what he says.
Cool.
You know what? That's the first time anyone's really kind of brought that up, and I think it's a really good point.
Great point.
I go back and forth on the whole CBC thing, because I think it's a good thing that there's an anchor.
Absolutely.
I think we need some sort of an anchor.
Right.
Yeah. Not that it's not like it's a fact checker, but something that can just have something like because we have so many things, like it's so polarizing in the U.S. And I think a lot of it is like they don't really have that kind of anchor.
They don't have a national broadcaster. They don't have a national broadcaster of record. Like the UK, the BBC would be the closest.
Exactly. The same kind of thing that we have.
Apples.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's just like, I like the idea of having that, because then you just, if you don't have that, then you just have the two sides developing their news and their opinions and just yelling at each other.
Yeah.
So I do feel that we need some sort of they say there's 3 sides every story. Well, we need the third side, right?
Yeah.
Would CBC be that third side now, or would it be more of one of 2 sides?
I think they are. I think they are more than the right spectrum likes to think they are. I think I think their news is pretty much news.
The right's tricky sometimes, because it'll say, don't listen to that, but then they'll also tell you in the same breath, we're the only source of information.
Well,
and I'll be like, whoa, wait a minute.
I think there's 2 things happening here, right?
Yeah.
There's the conversation about the editorial
that's the
requirements
thing.
at the CBC, which I have no qualms about, because I think they do a fantastic job. I think they do a fantastic job given how many resources they have.
Okay.
Right? I won't comment on anybody else's editorial decisions, because I've been in those rooms. Those are extremely hard decisions to make. And you're making different calls every day, right? But I think what's getting muddied and in the public discourse, which is really interesting, is that there's a conversation about, do you agree with what the CBC says?
Right.
Which I know over COVID in particular, got really hot button with some of that, right? I won't,
fairness, yes,
I
it
won't
did,
touch
yeah.
that. I won't touch that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's their battle editorially.
That's right.
But the business structure of the CBC and how it is eating opportunity for other smaller businesses to crop up, right?
Yeah.
Like they're $1 billion publicly funded or government funded agency that also sells advertising. Let's
Right.
just wrap our heads around that for a
No,
second.
I agree with that.
So they can compete at a different level than everybody else, just as a basic
They
argument.
have they have a
fair.
huge advantage, and on top of that, this was my other point about what my issue with it is. We talked about this guy on one of our previous when we had Sheldon McLeod on. I mentioned Andrew Crystal. I was a big Andrew Crystal fan.
I loved it. Yes.
Yeah, I was a big Andrew Crystal fan,
He was
and-
so lovely. I know some people thought he was weird and quirky.
He was weird, but
he was.
I loved that guy. Like
he
the way
was a
he
beautiful
approached
person.
things. Yeah, the way he approached things. He got me at a very young age, even though I kind of still like, but at a very young age, he got me listening to talk radio. I was like in my early 20s, listening to talk radio because of him. And, what he said one time really kind of like hammered it home and sticks with me to this day about the CBC is the outside of the financial advantage, but this relates to the financial advantage, is that he has to run his radio show, him and his producer. Versus if I was this at the CBC, I'd have me and a staff of people.
Completely.
Like
Right.
3, 4, 5 people, maybe even, depending on how big of a name he is or whatever, right? And he's like, that's their advantage. He's like, they can it's me and my producer trying to come up with content every single day versus them just like they have a team. And they can do that because they're selling the same ad space that I'm selling plus get government money.
And
That's the
and
huge
many of
advantage.
them are unionized.
And yes.
And I can say this because it was said publicly. We went to a podcast thing in Toronto. I can't remember. It was either this February or the February prior. It was cold. It was snowy. And there was a panel there about pitch your podcast to the CBC. And I was like, oh my God, like there's all of these like small-time creators just thinking that the only way to hit it big in Canada is to get picked up by the CBC
know.
Podcast Network,
I
which
agree with
is
you.
a problem in and
That's
of
a
itself.
huge problem.
Yep.
Do you want? Okay, I'm
Doesn't
gonna.
seem right to me.
Let's.
Yeah.
I've listened to CBC podcasts. They're phenomenal. Why are they phenomenal? Because there's 18 people working
Right.
on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah.
At Story Studio, we have maybe 5 or 6 on the largest show that we do.
Yeah.
So
Right.
our economies of scale and affordability vary drastically.
But also, what you get back to yourself, though, it's like now the return on investment for you. I mean, we went to the CBC, we might not make as much money for ourselves as we do now. We don't know that.
Well,
right?
here's
As a
riddle me
small
this.
creator, we're small creators.
How much do you think it costs them to do one narrative, like a scripted series, one episode at the CBC? What do you think it costs? Sunk cost.
Now, I'm going to say what my mental cost was. If you were a guy off the street and you asked me to do this for the first time, I'd say $1,700.
$1,700?
Yeah.
Okay.
What did you think? No, that's
One
not
episode-
CBC. What I think the CBC charges. That's what I think I would.
Well,
charge.
they don't charge us, but this is what we as taxpayers are paying.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting there thinking, like, one episode, the amount of hours that goes into it, counting all the hours that they probably get paid,
What do you think they would make?
yeah, but that's the thing, though, is
They would charge.
in one episode, we'll say if it's an hour long, they get paid for that hour, plus all the work leading up to it, which is a full work
So they're
day.
not getting paid. It's what the CBC is paying that team.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
though.
Okay.
But, but
yeah.
they
yeah,
have.
yeah.
I have to look at what they're getting
Sure,
paid
yeah.
in order to find out what they're giving
Yeah,
them.
you guys are the money guys.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there thinking. Realistically, probably $10,000 an episode.
You're not even in the ballpark.
No.
No?
Okay.
Neither of you is.
Wow. Okay.
So
So what is the answer?
Paid to
No,
produce
shut
an
up, shut up,
episode.
shut up. Tell it- I want to know the answer.
Okay, shut up.
So this is from the mouth of a CBC producer at
Right.
this event, and he said it publicly, so I
Yeah.
can say this now because I almost fainted.
Okay.
$35,000 to $40,000 for one episode
Wow.
of a narrative
Like a 40
show.
minute.
Now, here's the kicker: is that the majority of that, if you really, 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 really look at just their podcast division, okay, and you look at it through a critical eye, majority of that content is produced for American audiences. Why? We're coming back to version 2.0 of the original problem that I outlined for you guys. The problem is
Yeah.
the audience and the advertisers.
Right.
Okay? The big money advertisers in podcasting still reside south of the border.
That's
Yes.
true. That's
If
Huge-
you
huge
subscribe
problem.
to anything like Magellan AI or whatever, you're getting these week or monthly updates of who's spending in podcasting, specifically on podcast ads. Every single company is an American-based company.
Right.
They might have Canadian presence.
This episode was not brought to you by the Athletic Greens.
Right.
You know?
AG1.
AG1.
And there's a whole bunch of other ones. Anyway, so they need to make money. So they're building content
Right.
to be sold to American advertisers at a hugely inflated cost.
Wow.
And they're riding on the coattails of it being Canadian content. So now all of a sudden you see why when you ask me what I think about it, it's a loaded question because
Awesome question. It's the best question I ever asked.
there's a,
Seriously. A lot
of good
but there's a
answers. Yeah.
lot there's a
Yeah.
lot at play, right?
Yeah.
And so this is nothing against the people who are employed there. Man, they're doing great
No, I
work.
have a really good buddy that works at CBC.
But
Yeah.
the economies of scale don't make sense.
Right.
Right?
I totally understand.
So,
Yeah,
like, to
makes
be
sense.
clear, when you work with Story Studio Network, some of our shows do cost $10,000 an episode. Some of them do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not all of them. But, like, depending on what you want us to really go deep. You want us to go in the field. You want to work with us for a year. You want to do a really investigative thing. That's about what it's going to cost because this is the burn and I can show you.
Right.
But I can't even in my mind get to 35,000. Like, I could sit and try. I don't
We
drink,
just
but if you
need
guys give me a
truffles
couple
instead of
beer,
hot
I could
dogs.
sit here and
Yeah.
figure out how to spend 35 grand. But I can't do
It's an
it.
expensive beer.
My truffle dog.
Truffle dog. Caviar IPA.
So I don't know. I guess my point is that we need a complete reset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that was awesome. Thank you. I liked your explanation. That was great. How do you feel about CTV?
Let's go through them all.
That was a good one. Yeah. So, but like, yeah, I mean, that's the big media problem is, I think, always going to be a bit of a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And it's certainly
Yeah.
a challenge in the U.S., right? Like, there's nothing I've ever seen that's it's so whack on both sides. I feel so bad for people just trying to get news down there, like good information. Like when I look at like what CNN offers and Fox News offers alternatively, I'm like, God, both of these sides seem horrible.
But you know what, though? As much as people want to paint things in a certain light,
Yeah.
Fox, sure, that's one way.
Yeah.
CNN, that's another way.
yeah.
But like, you have other, it's some of the smaller ones that are really like the Alex Joneses or the the Big Turk or something like that. Those people of the world that, set up
Those
a
dudes are
studio in their
independents.
basement.
Yep. They literally did, like Alex Jones. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard of the Turk guy or whatever.
Oh yeah, the Big Turks. Or
I think it's
whatever,
Big Turk. I think that's what
I've
it
seen
is.
it for a minute. Yeah,
Yeah.
I blocked that channel.
Yeah, it's just
It
I
started
don't-
making me angry, so I just got rid of it.
I believe in being
Yeah.
informed, but I think what I don't want to hear is just people who are just angry.
Yeah,
Right? Give me the news, inform me. I want to be informed, but some people are just so angry all the time. They just
They're so
they
angry
look
before they
to
even
the
listen.
negative,
Yeah,
right?
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it comes there's Broadcast Standards Council and the CRTC. A lot of folks don't know this either. Is that oftentimes if you get a license, especially in radio, you're granted that license on promise of performance. It's called a POP.
Okay.
So, and a lot of times, what's tied to that is the type of content that you broadcast, namely news and your commitment to local news. So that's where we get to the barrier of entry thing is like, if you really want to be credible, I would think you want to be listening to a news source or consuming a news source that has adhered to some sort of ethics and some sort of, right? So Alex Jones has no ethics.
How do you find
Yeah.
that today if you're looking for the most credible news source?
Well,
That's a good
How would you
question.
do that?
Yeah.
I think saying the most credible is like saying the most. Yeah, I think that might just be a bit of a red herring. Like you're not going to find the most credible.
Or a credible news source in Canada for Canadians? Like where do you get your information?
Where do I get my information?
Yeah,
I
her.
consume. It just starts and ends with me. What's interesting is that we're hearing a lot about news podcasts coming to the forefront.
Yeah.
Like they're really taking off in terms of listenership.
Okay.
So all of the big broadcasters have news podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all pretty excellent. The one that Rogers produces is particularly good.
Okay.
For big issues-based stuff, I don't know if you guys have heard of The Logic. So they're
think so,
they're
no.
based in Ontario.
Cool.
They just got a huge round of venture capital. They're doing incredible work. I consume my news to be well-rounded. So I don't believe in the gospel of news, right? Like I'm not going to one church, forgive the analogy, like every single week. I think that's part of the problem that you're seeing is that news consumership in the States has become partisan, has become ideological, it has become identity-based. I think we can be smarter than that up here. So just in terms of the credibility, right? Like anybody with a microphone does not a news organization make. I think that's the point I want to make.
Do you see like kind of like just where you kind of like mentioned the down there versus up here type of thing? Do you feel that like our news media industry is like being hurt by the amount of reach now that the American news has?
It always hurts me when people know more about Fox News and CNN News than about Canadian
100%.
broadcasters across the board.
I mean, me too.
But that's not always on them, right? We got to blame ourselves a bit too. Like, like I always think of like that. I know the intention was good when they got news off Facebook, but man, people used to share a lot of local articles and a lot of good information on Facebook because it was like the community page.
But it's true. But I think what she's talking about is like more people know what's going on with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris than they do with like our own
tabloid.
With more than maybe Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre and Singh, right? Like, go on the street and say, "Hey, did you know that last week the NDP severed the agreement with the NDP or with the Liberals?" How many people would know that versus how many people would know what Trump is doing and Kamala Harris is doing?
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day, bumped into him casually. He didn't know who the Premier of Nova Scotia was, didn't know this, didn't know that. And I was like, whoa. Like, my brain's not there, but I was, kind of like perplexed of how, but you know about Trump, right? So that is a bit of a weird thing to me. Yeah.
And I think
that's in the personality though, or the person. Or that's not everybody.
No, I
that
think
can't be the majority of people. You think?
I do think it is.
Really?
I think we're very plugged into the States.
Very
and
much.
The
More
expectation, a lot of that bleeds into what we consume in Canada and how we expect our news media to act.
Sure.
And that's where, I think the CBC holds great value to your point that it is an anchor for us. It makes us as a differentiator. Right.
That's I think my big thing is like I know people can get frustrated with like the minimum Canadian content and all that stuff, but it's not any different. Like it really kind of hammers home the fact that if you don't protect your culture, you could lose it. So I think that's some of the things that people kind of Quebec gets the criticism a little bit about Bill 101 protecting their French culture. People's like, oh yeah, it has to be French, but again, it's kind of when you're outnumbered by such a large amount and it's overwhelming. I mean, the U.S. consumes the world most of the time with their Hollywood and stuff like that, right? There's just people in India that knows what's going on in the United States, right? And then Americans can't even name what our capital is or things like that, right? So that's where I think it's really important, and that's what scares me about people here is they're so in tune with what's going on with the U.S. And I do feel it's getting worse. I think it always spilled over, but now there's internet and all this other stuff, and like you can't see Canadian news anymore, but you can see American news on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's worse than it's ever been.
TikTok, American news.
American news, right?
Yeah.
But it's TikTok.
And then when there is news
TikTok's
in
different
Canada,
though.
it's really angry one way or another. Like TikTok is it's usually people that love Pierre Poilievre or people that hate him, and it's very sensationalized information.
I don't
you're getting.
have TikTok.
No,
I don't have TikTok.
We as the Afternoon Pint have
Afternoon
TikTok.
Pint has TikTok.
I rarely go on, and he actually is the only one. I do most of the social media. He goes on. And
I didn't use social media until 2020. Like,
he didn't.
Weird. Yeah, I wasn't using
Seriously,
it.
you didn't?
No, like I had it.
He joined it, and he was Giles the goldfish.
And I had it for like a week, and it was really funny being a goldfish. And I make jokes about like just a day in the life of a goldfish. I had it for like 3 or 4 years. I had like 10 friends. I was happy.
And then we started this, and he was like, "Oh, I have to be a professional." Yeah. No, actually, it was the work.
Work thing. Insurance thing.
Yeah, it's when he was going to get new insurance. It was like, I had to be a professional now.
Yeah, I got to get it. I got a profile after the pandemic. Right, like a real profile, profile. Yeah, somebody flushed my fish down the toilet. And but anyways,
I think I agree. I think we need to fight back a little bit more and keep Canadian content. I like that we have those things in place to protect our Canadian heritage and our Canadian voices and all that other stuff, which is, I thought it was the story of Trudeau's, leadership is great intentions, short-sightedness. Hey, let's get journalists paid.
Yeah.
You have to pay them, Facebook. And Facebook goes, yeah, our GDP is the same as yours. So nope.
See ya. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No,
that was
agree
a
with that.
disaster.
Yeah.
A disaster.
Yeah. And I don't know why we don't correct those mistakes. Every once in a while, it's okay to say, oh, we fucked up, and just kind of back up the truck a little bit, try that again.
Politicians hate doing that sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why.
Well, here's the other thing is that
Yeah.
I think what we're dancing around too is that I feel deeply that the solution, and I don't know if that's a big S or a little s, but the solution to this big quagmire of a problem is not government. And I know we want to say that it's backing up policy, creating new protectionism, fixing the CBC and this and that. I truly, truly, truly feel that the shorter term solution that can build back a system that works for the audience is going to be driven by corporate Canada.
Yeah. Corporate Canada.
And small media owners. I think that's where the solution is.
Entrepreneurs, Canadian entrepreneurs.
The entrepreneurship. Because we're nimble, we're flexible, we know what we want, we understand how to do, how to evaluate things.
Right.
We are closer to the audience. We don't have the bureaucracy. We don't have the agenda that politics do. And I mean,
and you have to do things based on you were trying to make money, so you were actually going to correct mistakes and things like that because of that.
You have that greater accountability, and so there's been a lot of conversation about, well, should we be funding Canadian newsrooms and giving tax credits and this and that and this? Okay, great, I'll take your tax credits, but please let's not assume that is going to fix it, because reality is, all of those things are actually what got us into this problem to begin with. It was a death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Right. Okay.
So we need to make some really focused, small, intentional moves. So I mentioned John Pohl. He's one of them. He's doing amazing things for
Shout
local
out to John
radio.
Pohl.
Yeah.
And seriously,
I'll check him out. Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah.
I'll do some shout outs to some other people, and I will say I'm extremely apologetic that none of them is a woman. So maybe that's me with the loudest voice, and I'll proudly take up that shield. But John Pohl is one. Jeff Elgie is another. He's got Village Media. He's doing incredible things in the digital space.
Jeff? What region in Canada is Jeff working in?
He owns Ontario almost. So any kind of .today. So he's based in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. I think they're up to 100 properties in markets.
It must take a large amount of capital to get all that, though, right?
Now, if you look at his business model, he is completely self-funded.
Okay.
As far as I can tell, now he has partners in the States. He's got a really interesting business model. So that's what I'm going to say is it's not a traditional cut and paste business model. These are people who are breaking models and making it work. So you've got Jeff Elgie with Village Media. You've got John Pohl, who's doing some really cool stuff in radio. You want to talk about crowdsourcing and user generated content and kind of on the ground, verging on influencer kind of stuff.
All right.
Chuck LaPointe is heading up NAR City, and he suffered massively when C-18 came into effect. I had a phone call with him, and he was like, Erin, 25% of their profit gone.
Wow.
Their whole profit margin was gone overnight.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they lost almost the same amount of viewers.
Right.
Wow.
So he was all of a sudden found himself.
Vice went bankrupt, didn't they?
It was right around that same time.
Yeah, I thought they were phenomenal.
So what
I
Chuck,
think they are phenomenal.
But what Chuck did, to his credit, is he just tightened his bootstraps and figured it out. And they launched 2 new divisions in the wake of C-18 that are now making money. Now he's back on Meta because they've walked back some of the ban. So he's recouping some of the gains. Yeah. And he's in a better position than he was before. So we talk about the resilience of the entrepreneur mindset.
Right.
If he was just sitting there and waiting for a government handout, he never would have happened.
No.
He never would have happened the way that it did.
Yeah.
So in terms of a digital ground level creator kind of approach, Chuck's doing incredible things. I think what we haven't cracked yet is how podcasting plays a part in this. And that's where I'm really interested in looking at this and seeing where is the interplay between what's happening in local radio and what's happening with local podcasts.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think what's happening is a couple guys drinking beers with a bunch of people. Is what's happening. That's what I think is happening. That's the future of podcasting.
Maybe we'll solve all the world's problems.
Yeah, we will eventually. One guest at a time. Yeah, one guest at a time.
Yeah.
So,
But they took our glasses away. How am I going to cheers?
oh yeah, that's right.
We're going to have to cheers cell phones. That's weird.
Yeah, that is
we
weird.
we just want cheers.
That's fine. Yeah, we
That's
will.
a weird,
We'll do a
we always
figure
group
cheers at
hug,
the
group
end of the
hug.
show. I don't know
big
what
group
to do
hug,
now.
big group
See,
hug.
so easily I get thrown off my game. I need
But
that.
how do people check your content out?
Thanks.
LinkedIn would be the best place.
Erin
for this.
Trafford, LinkedIn.
Erin Trafford, LinkedIn. You can go to storystudionetwork.com.
StoryStudioNetwork.com. And I'd love to check out some of the stories. Like, is all your stories on your website?
All of our productions are there as of last week. So
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you can get like them on Apple and Spotify and all the things.
All of the things.
All of the things.
Cool. Man, Aaron, it was really awesome.
Yeah,
having
this was
you
a great
on for
conversation.
Chat. I
Thanks for
hope you
having
had
me.
fun with us.
Yeah.
Totally welcome. Come back again in the new year or sooner. We'll chat again. We'll
Take shots at some other
Sounds
media.
good. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Yeah. Going at CTV next time. All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to The Afternoon Pint. We are an independent podcast and we need your support. Please take a moment to hit that like, follow, and share button. Email us if you have an idea or suggestion for the show. Please send your feedback. We'd love to hear from you.